see you all here. And thank you for everything that you've done. We're on the move here. There's something happening and you can feel it. We know we're on the move. Well, look, so when you've all been doing it, you've been getting out there, knocking on the doors, you've been folding those leaflets, you've been out there, you've been on the phones, you've been doing all of that, the social media. I am imploring you today, one more day of this. Come on, let's keep going. We can win this. And let's not be deflected by what the media are saying about us. We know we've got the message for our people, and we're going to prosecute that with every last ounce of our energy to make sure we got this man in number 10 Downing Street by the weekend. And sisters, brothers, if we want to bring an end to this punishing poverty and austerity that the Tories have visited on our people, there's only one way we're going to do it, and get people voting Labour. Let's get a Labour government in. So when you go back to your constituencies, you're going to be doing more door knocking. Have those conversations in the home, in the workplace. Make sure each and every one of you is having 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 conversations across the piece. We can do this. It's in our reach, colleagues. So let's get on with it. So honestly, a huge thank. We're all absolutely in awe of what you've all done for us. You've been fantastic. This is a Labour team effort, and we've all played our part. And a huge thank you from me personally. So, look, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to one of the absolute stars of this campaign. She's been an absolute stalwart, and my goodness me, hasn't she performed brilliantly in the media? I'm going to give you Laura Peacock.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. The overwhelming feeling that I feel today is one of pride. I am so proud to be part of this beautiful, this wonderful Labour family. Every single one of you have conducted yourselves with absolute integrity. Do we need lies in our campaign? No, we do not. We do not need any lies, because the truth of the matter is, it is we who have the solutions to the greatest problems facing our communities today. Is Lauren going to win here? She absolutely is. And the self-declared Thatcherite that is up against her will be defeated at the polls. And this community will have somebody on their side once again. Over the last 6 weeks, I know it has been hard. I know you'll have sore legs, sore feet. Your shoes will have holes in them. Your throats will be hoarse from all of the conversations that you have had. But tomorrow night, when those polling stations close, every single one of your energies, every single conversation that you have had will be absolutely worth it. Because there are people right now who do not know who they are going to vote for. And it is our job to have a conversation with every single one of those people who do not know who they are going to vote for, and tell them that a better society is possible. A better world is absolutely possible. Why do we do this, brothers and sisters? Why have we left our families, our partners, and campaigned for the last 6 weeks? Well, we need a Labour government, but it is for those 14.3 million people in poverty, the 9 million of which are in working households. It is for those over 4 million children who are in poverty. We are doing it for those children. We are having those conversations for the children of our communities. Why are we having the conversations? Well, it is because of the 1950s women who have had their money robbed from them, stolen from them. And when they say you can't afford it, that is your money. Yes, we can afford it, and that money shall be given back to you by a Labour government. So when we feel like it is too hard, when we have those dispiriting conversations, though they are fewer and fewer now, know that we are doing it for the person who has been sanctioned so cruelly by this shameless government, for the person who cannot feed their child, who goes out to work every single day, spends hours and hours and hours at work but cannot pay their bills. All of our energy is for them to build a different and better society. Is it possible? Of course it is possible. These next few hours, they will throw absolutely everything at us. This man, Jeremy Corbyn, has sustained the most unbelievable attacks on his character in the last few years. And he is still standing tall. He is still standing strong. Because we don't need to spread fake news. We don't need to spread lies. We are on the right side of history. We will create a Labour government in the next 24 hours. Go out there, have all of the conversations you can, occupy every single space with your politics. Thank you very much. Oh shit, I'm going to say a second. I got carried away. Now for my second speech. Now I'm only joking. It is my pleasure to introduce the chair of our party, a top comrade. He is always there when you need him, always on the side of working people. It's Ian Lavery.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I'm absolutely buzzing. Because you know what, Middlesbrough? We will win this election tomorrow night. We'll have Lauren Dingsdale in the Commons next week. And we'll have Jeremy Corbyn, the new Prime Minister. Why should I not be buzzing? I heard people singing before there. I think that's great. I think it was the women here. Corbyn for, what was it? What was the tune? Prime Minister Corbyn! Prime Minister Corbyn! Prime! And let me tell you, thanks very much for that. You're not a very good singer, mind, but never mind. Listen, it's within our grasp. We're only inches away from the winning line, despite the mass hysteria from the establishment, from the media, everyone who was absolutely desperate to avoid a Labour victory. And you know what? With the support of people here in Middlesbrough, with the support of people right across this country, we're nearly there. I promise you, we're nearly there. When you see this, I call this the Book of Hope. This will transform. This will transform communities. It'll transform society. It'll transform our great country. Because everything in there, there's something to change people's lives. There's too many people suffering, by the way. There's too many suffering in this country. And this election isn't about Brexit. I'm not interested in the Brexit. This is about what type of society we all want to live in. It's about looking after each other. And by goodness, the Book of Hope spells that out tremendously well. You know what? We cannot afford another 5 days of Tory austerity. Never mind another 5 years of Tory austerity. We cannot have another 5 days of Boris Johnson, for heaven's sake. The lies, the misogyny, the racism. It's an absolute disgrace. He should never, ever be Prime Minister of this country, and he's not fit for purpose, and we're going to boot him out like a dog in the night. I'll tell you what, when you knock on these people's doors and people in communities right across the country, When they're saying they don't know, ask them, are they prepared to see people in the foreseeable future, kids in poverty, kids going to school with holes in their shoes, kids going to school without the right attire in these freezing cold conditions, not even having enough food in their bellies. 4.1 million kids in poverty, lots of them in areas like this. We cannot allow this to continue. We cannot allow the country to continue in this horrendous vein. We've got more homeless people on the streets. We've got more people in poverty. 1.9 million elderly people in poverty. We had 50,000 people, elderly people, pensioners, die in 2018 because they couldn't afford to both heat and eat. What sort of society are we on? When you knock on people's doors and they see you doing no, challenge them. Whose side are you on? Are you on the side of Corbyn's Labour Party with the Book of Hope? Are you on the side of continued misery for millions of people in this society? We're the sixth richest economy in the world. Never forget that. We've got lots of money. It's the way we spend the money. The 5 richest families in this country have got more wealth than the 13 million poorest in society. How can that continue? So the message to those who are sitting on the fence, they need to wake up, they need to smell the coffee, they need to step up to the plate. Get off the fence. And whose side are you on? Are you on the Labour side? We'll get rid of universal credit. We'll get rid of sanctioning. We'll have a social security system whose default position isn't to call you a scrounger and a cheat, but we look to support people in difficult times. We'll build 100,000 new council houses per year over the first 5 years of Parliament. We'll renationalise rail, mail, and water. We'll give people broad. Whose side are you on? Absolutely. We'll ensure that broadband is rolled out to everyone free of charge. We'll ensure, comrades, friends, that we'll protect and invest in the NHS. And a message from Middlesbrough today, the NHS is not for sale. And Jeremy's been very clear on that. So we'll protect the NHS. We'll put money in your pockets. We'll ensure that the public sector workers, the fantastic work they've done for generations, the fantastic work they've done under the most terrible conditions in the last 9 years, we'll give them an immediate 5% pay rise. We'll also ensure that the real living wage will be introduced, £10 an hour from 16-year-old right up to the recent level. Can you imagine what difference that makes to ordinary people, 16-year-old? It means £6,000 rise immediately. It'll transform society. It means that young people will not have to use food banks. It means that young people will not have to claim benefits. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to value people in society. We're going to make sure that this document is not only a strategy document as it stands, this will be the manual to transform society. This is what we'll operate from when Jeremy gets into number 10 on Friday morning. Solidarity! The next speaker needs no introduction, and I'm absolutely certain that she'll be in the Commons on Friday morning. Lauren Dingsdale.
Thanks, Ian. I am absolutely thrilled to be standing here today after 18 months of campaigning in this constituency, in my home constituency, the people that I went to school with, for my family, my communities. It's an absolute honour to be stood here today. The hardest part of the campaign hasn't been the fact it's a winter election. It hasn't been the rain, the cold. It hasn't been the media and the constant barrage of fake news. It's been the stories that I've heard on the doorstep. I've had over a dozen people actually break down in tears to me on the doorstep about what they've had to go through over the last 9 years of Tory austerity. Just this week, a man called me about his daughter who had had a fall in Martin just up the road at about 6:30 at night. And an ambulance wasn't able to get there till 1:30 in the morning to take her to James Cook. That is 7 hours in the cold, in the dark, and in excruciating pain. This is not acceptable. And under 5 more years of the Tories, it would only get worse. But the best part of the campaign has been able to stand on that manifesto, being able to stand with that true message of hope, that things can be different and that things will be different. That manifesto is an absolute blueprint for how we can rebuild our country and rebuild society and rebuild our economy so that it works for normal people like us. And my absolute favourite part of the manifesto is our North-East manifesto. The Labour Party is going to rebuild Britain, but with the help of the North-East. We are the beating heart of that manifesto. A 13 billion transformation fund that we will control. 80,000 decent quality, well-paid jobs back here again. Us leading the way in carbon capture and storage, in hydrogen, in manufacturing the components for the wind farms and for the electric cars, a new steel recycling plant in Redcar. We have real plans to transform this area and bring it back to prosperity again. And we have about 33 hours to do it. Now, we've put in a lot of hard work over the past 18 months, and particularly in the last 6 weeks, but it's not over yet. 33 hours to change the country, and 33 hours to get rid of the Tory MP here who doesn't bother answering his constituents' emails. So once you finish standing in the cold in the car park, come join me on the doorstep. Like I said, 33 hours. We've got plenty to get through. But before that, it is my absolute honour to be able to introduce the man that you've all been waiting to see. Before the election started, I saw an interview with Jeremy where he was asked how he dealt with the stress of his job. And his reply, that it wasn't that stressful because he wasn't worried about how he was going to feed his family, whether or not he was going to have work the next day, whether or not his landlord was going to evict him. That response shows he is exactly the sort of leader that our country needs. And so with that, I'm honoured to introduce our next Prime Minister, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you. Thank you, Middlesbrough. Thank you all for being here today. I just let you know this is the 82nd constituency I've been to during the last 51 days of this campaign. And there's still more to go because we're going into South Yorkshire, then we're going to the East Midlands, then eventually ending up in London tonight. We're covering the whole country in 5 days, and not one bit of it done with a helicopter. And I just let you know this, I've not come here to deliver milk or to hide in a fridge. I've come here with a message of hope for this country, of what this manifesto, what our party represents. Because what we've had
for the past 9 years has been cuts in public services, cuts in our National Health Service, and frozen wages, frozen public sector wages, and many people have lost their jobs. What Lauren was just talking about, the way in which universal credit operates, the cruelty of that system, all of this was a political choice made in 2010 by the Liberal Democrats and the Tories. They knew exactly what they were doing when they imposed austerity on the people of this country. And the North East has suffered worse than many other areas because it already has a lower level of investment from central government, already has more people living in poverty, already has more people with insecure work and a very difficult future so long as this Tory government stays in office. So our manifesto is there to be carried out as soon as we win this election. And I am utterly determined to do it. I'm determined to lead a Labour government that will properly fund our National Health Service, the social care that people need, and end universal credit and the horrors and the indignities that go with it. But it's also about investment for the future. The people that have spoken on this platform today have done fantastic work in Parliament. I want to thank Andy MacDonald for the work that he's done as our Shadow Transport Secretary, because he's led the way on bringing our railways back into public ownership where they should never have left, reducing the fares on them in the process, but also ensuring there is a bus service operating in all parts of the country. Because it's all very well being able to get to a place by train. If you can't get any further, it's not much help. And if you live in a remote community and there's no bus, and you don't have a car and you can't afford a taxi, you are stuck. Surely it's up to us in government or in councils to make sure there are bus services for the whole country, and that is exactly what we will be delivering. And then you follow the news of the last few days, follow the way in which the Prime Minister and the government have behaved. Every story that comes out about shortages in the NHS, problems of treatment of patients, the way in which the staff in the NHS are so grotesquely overworked and under such strain and pressure. And you can only throw yourself at the problem and say it's got to be solved. You can also show support and sympathy for NHS workers. Somebody contacted me this morning. Their mum was taken into an A&E department yesterday afternoon. And this person is not blaming the NHS, not blaming the staff, not blaming anyone in that hospital. She's saying that her mother is still waiting for a bed to go into in the hospital. And it's only the middle of December. How much worse is this going to get when the weather gets even colder, end of December, January, February? That is the winter crisis that never leaves us anymore. 40,000 vacancies in the NHS, £10 billion of privatisation of the NHS by this government, and the crisis gets worse and worse and worse. And so, let's say a big cheer for all the NHS workers and what they do. Nurses, doctors, cleaners, mental health nurses, everybody. It's the team that works in the hospital. It's the team that works in the hospital. And so, Boris Johnson claimed that sort of about 15 hours after he became Prime Minister, he was going to build 40 new hospitals around the country. No, we don't use bad language. I leave that to Ian Lavery. And then I thought, well, my job, leader of the opposition, is to ask him a question. So I said, where are these 40 new hospitals going to be? Not really sure. Okay. A few days later, another question, and it's 40 suddenly become 20. Okay. That's a 50% reduction. A few days later, it becomes 6. A few days later, it becomes the seed funding for the possibility of 6 new hospitals. In other words, absolutely nothing. Just a complete piece of dishonesty. And then we asked about these talks going on with the USA, the secret trade talks that are going on. We asked for the papers on them. And under the Freedom of Information Act, they were indeed produced. Pages and pages of them. Pages and pages of black ink, blotting out all the words of the discussions that had taken place. All we know is that Liam Fox and officials from the government were attending these talks. We then found from the United States that they had indeed been discussing Britain's public services in a future trade deal with the USA. And then all the documents were revealed, and we've made them all public last week. And you go through them, and it's truly frightening. They sat down there for 2 years talking about access to our public services for American companies. And they talk about access to the health market in Britain. Well, I didn't know we had a health market. I thought we had a national health service in Britain. And that surely is the principle behind it. And so you then go through it and you discover that they're proposing that the patents on very expensive medicines from the USA will be extended so we can't have the generic form of them, putting up medicine prices. We then discover that they're wanting access to public service markets. And then we discover they want what's called investor protection for US companies to come into the British market. This is what Boris Johnson proposes to do if re-elected. A sweetheart trade deal with Donald Trump and his billionaire friends in Big Pharma and other companies in the USA to come in and take over our public services. Our message is very, very clear and very, very simple. It goes like this. Our NHS is not for sale. Not for sale now or at any other time in the future. And so you then have to move on to how we conclude this election campaign. As Laura pointed out, we've now had 51 days of this campaign. We have 51 days of unbelievable levels of abuse hurled at leading figures in the Labour Party, unbelievable levels of character assassination going on against individuals in our party and our movement. And I simply say this, if you wish to inhabit the gutter, that's absolutely fine by me, but I will not be joining you there because I am more interested in getting the issues across. So you have to ask yourself the question of trust. Do you trust the Prime Minister to do a deal with the United States? Do you trust the Prime Minister to protect our National Health Service, our Education Service, or any other service? And to him, telling the truth, telling an untruth, it all becomes some sort of vague mirage that moves on from one day to the other. I think it's clear that tomorrow we've got to decide which way we're going to go in this country. We're a country with 4 million children living in poverty. We're a country where the life expectancy is declining in some areas of the country. We're a country with 700,000 children, either in oversized classes or being taught by an unqualified teacher. We have 130,000 children who'll wake up on Christmas morning not knowing if they've got the certainty of somewhere to live in the future. And for most working class communities all across Britain, their spending power has declined by about a quarter since 2010. That is the reality of what austerity has done. And you've seen it in the boarded up shops in the high street. You've seen it in the youth centres that have been closed, the libraries that have been closed, the sports facilities that are priced out of the range of ordinary people. You've seen the way in which our communities have been devastated. And those in work, now reduced, 1 million of them, to working on 0 hours contracts, which in reality is no different to the way that dock workers were treated in the past when they were told to queue up and try and get a day's work. Staring at your mobile phone all day, hoping for work tomorrow, is practically not much different. So it needs a Labour government that's going to do things very differently. But some people have not suffered from austerity at all. Austerity has not fallen evenly across the country. David Cameron once memorably said, "We're all in it together." No, we are not. There's now 150 billionaires in Britain. The very richest people in Britain have seen their personal wealth double in the last 9 years. You've had a government in office that slashed the services and the spending on people, ordinary people, all across the country, and at the same time given tax relief and tax write-offs at the top end to the very wealthiest. We're a more divided society than we've ever been. Are we seriously going to allow this lot back into office to create more division, more poverty, and more desperation in our society? I am utterly determined that we go out flat out between now and 10 o'clock tomorrow evening to get everyone to vote, and hopefully that they will vote Labour and recognise in our manifesto there is hope, there is something positive. We're a party that will invest in all parts of the country, will invest in the infrastructure and the broadband that's necessary, and invest in creating the good quality, well-paid, secure jobs of the future through our green industrial revolution. And so it'll be a Labour government that will deliver that for the future. A Labour government moving into office and measuring itself by how it deals with the climate crisis, how it reduces poverty and reduces inequality and gives all our children a real hope for the future. I'll finish on this. The last Labour government after the Second World War created the National Health Service. It's our greatest achievement as a movement, the National Health Service. I want the legacy of our Labour government to be the creation of a National Education Service, where every school is properly funded. Children are not put through the stress they are in primary school of excessive testing, and youngsters going to get an apprenticeship and go to college or go to university don't have to go into debt to get an education. And we will therefore end university fees and the stress level that brings about. This manifesto has been written by some very clever people in many places. It's also been written by people who don't even know they contributed to it. Those that went to Labour Party branch meetings, union branch meetings, sent in advice, sent in letters, told me things, told other people things. This manifesto is a product of the aspirations and the wishes of millions of people all across this country, of the kind of country we can be, the kind of place we can occupy in the world, a voice for justice, for human rights, and for economic justice around the world. A Labour government that you can be proud of, a Labour government that will deliver for the people. Please do absolutely everything you can to win in Middlesbrough South and East Cleveland and all the other marginal constituencies. Re-elect the great people that have been on this platform with me. But above all, remember, it is our choice, our chance tomorrow to elect a government that will be for the many, not the few, a government that you can trust, and it will not be motivated solely by more billionaires around the world. It'll be motivated by improving the life chances of every single child all across this country and bringing justice to those denied social care, the waspy women who've been so grievously treated, and so many others. Tomorrow, let's go out there and win that election, win for Labour, and get a Labour government